Welcome everybody to System Admin Insights. So good to see you here as always. I'm glad everybody found the new link. We like to kick every meeting off with a little bit of gratitude. Today, I am grateful for dad jokes and sharing dad jokes with my dad. This is a recent development in our relationship. We've been texting each other jokes and it's a lot of fun. And, who else wants to hear those? Just my dad. What else do we have in chat here?
I like a dad joke.
You like a dad joke? Okay, great. Careful what you ask for. Michelle says, my husband is finally employed again after almost 4 months. Michelle, that's fantastic. So glad to hear that. Congratulations. Amanda also loves a good dad joke. Okay. All right. Vivian, grateful for my Instant Pot. Love having dinner ready when I finish work. Oh, boy. Yeah, that sounds nice. Daniela, flannel pajamas. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I'm grateful I got his Nespresso machine.
We all are.
Jessica says heated blankets.
Mm.
Yeah, I've never had one of those.
Oh, they're awesome.
Really? I tried a weighted blanket once and I was like, why does anyone like this? This is so weird. Greg says doggy belly rubs. Yes, indeed. Grateful for care credit, says Cheryl. All right. That's a lot of gratitude. Thank you everybody for sharing that. It always sets a nice mood. Let's go on to our next slide. Reminders, we're recording the session. Can't talk today. We are recording the session and we'll post the recording to Circle, the audio to Spotify, and every once in a while we put one on YouTube. The transcript is incorporated into the Circle chatbot to enrich its responses, and more as we have more transcripts in there and more conversations, those answers that we're getting with the Circle AI functionality are just getting more and more useful. Next slide, please. Today, we're going to do a Now You Know with Vivian Larson, HR technology strategist, on the subject of confidential recs. And one thing I wanted to point out is that we're starting to add these Now You Know sessions as course material inside SAI. So we are extracting them from the main call, putting them up in the courses section. So if you want to reference these great topics, we've done 7 or 8 of these now. We're going through our archives, putting them all there, and then moving forward, anytime we do a Now You Know, you'll be able to access it. That is part of your paid membership. You always have access to the stuff that we're putting up in that courses section. All right, then we're going to go to member questions, announcements, general questions. You can stay on for What We Learned video if the spirit moves you. Next slide, please. And this week is our 7-day leaderboard. Congratulations to everybody who is engaged in the community, getting value. We also recently started our one-on-one on-demand consulting sessions. I don't want to call anybody out, but I know one of these people here recently benefited from this accessibility. Previously, we had office hours that were fixed times, didn't work for everybody, so we wanted to change it up. So we now have a round-robin Calendly link, and it's the first post in the product community. If you go to the iCIMS channel, the pinned post at the top has a Calendly link where you can grab 15 minutes with an IT consultant at a time that works for you. Next slide, please. All right, fantastic. So with that, I am going to spotlight Vivian. One moment. There we go. Remember to do that. Vivian, what do you have to share with us today?
Well, so the topic of the week seems to be confidential recs. It's come up with several of our customers. And before I even dive into it, I want to do a little bit of a question to the group about why. Why is everybody all of a sudden looking confidential recs? It's an interesting trend. It's like 6 different, some of our IRD customers, some of the folks on the community. It seems to be like a trend at the moment that everybody's starting to investigate this. And it's kind of interesting. It might just be a coincidence, but it just, several people asked it this week. So is there something in the hiring cycle that has you all looking at confidential recs at this particular point in time, is my question to the group. So we didn't actually do a formal poll on this because I didn't let Alex know beforehand that I was going to be asking this question. But in the chat, if you want to drop why you think confidential recs might have come up for you right this moment. And then with that, so Daniela, Greg. So if everybody wants to read the chat, I'm not going to read your comments out loud. But just drop for me why you think confidential recs are such a big thing. I'm going to share my screen real quick and just share if you need an outline of the way to do confidential recs. I did a training internally for our team on how to do confidential recs, and Paul took that training and the transcript from that training and outlined it into step-by-steps in here. So there is a post building confidential recs and iCIMS, and as Alex has said in the past, go away. If you want to search this confidential recs, that post and other previous mentions of confidential recs will come up. But here's Kathy. She also asked about confidential recs this week. So we'll get into her interview feedback forms question a little bit later. But I just wanted to walk through some different pieces, moving pieces of confidential recs. They're not incredibly complicated as a concept in iCIMS. It's as simple as creating a field on your rec and marking it whether it's confidential or not from a configuration perspective. But there are some moving pieces associated with it that are points of consideration. The biggest point of consideration most people have around confidential recs is that they don't want users who should not have the ability to see it to have access to the person's data. And in some cases, I've seen them not necessarily just not wanting to see the offer details tab. I've seen them wanting to hide the profile altogether. So there's some really key things to think about as you're going into the process of developing your own confidential rec strategy. And those are, what are your ultimate end goals? What are you trying to hide? Are you trying to hide job? You trying to hide the candidates associated with the job, trying to hide data on the candidate's profile, but it's okay for others to see the candidates? You need to make that decision at the start of deciding that you're going to build this. But functionally, there's the moving pieces that are associated with it are, first and foremost, we're going to create a field. This is our test site, so I can't follow this all the way through because there are pieces of it I cannot configure in here. But the first thing to start with is a confidential field on the requisition, and you mark it yes or no. It's as simple as that. Now, I have seen as I was telling Ty in our training earlier this week, I've seen people go a little crazy here, where it's not just confidential, yes, no, it's confidential, it's executive, it's doctor, it's healthcare leader. So instead of just simply being a yes, no question, which is the simplest, keep it simple configuration of this, I have seen people build layers into this, which has had various levels of success, and we'll talk about that as we explain the rest of the solution. But first thing first, we're going to explain yes, no, is the requisition confidential? And so if I've theoretically marked this yes, my next layers of configuration are threefold. You can start with one of three ways to limit your users from seeing this information. The first one is search locks. So let's talk about search locks real quick. If you're unfamiliar with search locks are all or nothing. All or nothing meaning if I have search logged a profile, I am not allowed to see that profile in any scenario whatsoever. There is no gray. They are on or off. So a key thing to think about search locks, in this case, this particular search lock, this is where you would go see it. Let me see if I can think of a place where there's definitely going to be a search lock. Hiring manager. It's a little easier when I can show a customer site, but I don't really want to do that in this instance. Yeah, user it's never going to have one. So a search lock is basically anything. So this is the area of the system. It's anything that you can actually show in the filtered portion of a report. So let's just say that confidential rec equals yes. If I can build it in a report, I can build a search lock. So in this case, confidential equals yes. The place where I cannot do in a search lock is dynamic filter. I can't say if confidential equals yes and confidential access on my employee profile equals yes, then show me. That is not something that is possible in search locks. Search locks affect this area of the system if I'm going to be able to do a quick search, and they affect this area of the system if I'm going to be able to search. If you have turned search off for your user groups, hire manager user groups very often have turned search off, or if you have enabled the feature that allows this search right here to be I'm sorry, the bar is in the way, the person search here to be a recruiting workflow search. So I want you to keep that in mind. There is a way, it's a simple checkbox that makes this person search mirror recruiting workflow search locks. Then you can basically give them the search and honor search locks in the recruiting workflow area, where if you would build a recruiting workflow search lock off of a recruiting workflow search parameter where job file confidential equals yes, then show me the requisition. This is the simplest path to what you are looking for. Like if is not yes in this case, like I would build this search lock is not yes. And this then per login group, I would have a recruiting workflow search lock, and then I would change this to be act as recruiting workflow search. So that is the simplest path, simplest steps. Now, the place where this breaks down, and a lot of people are like, this isn't enough, is where I have gray areas where I have a TA leader who needs to be able to see confidential recs, but not necessarily see the offer details tab or the information on the offer details tab for the candidate. Or I have a executive who needs to be able to see that the confidential rec is active and the candidates in the confidential rec, but not necessarily be able to search other people's profiles in the system. Search locks are one-to-one, where if it's yes, if confidential is not yes, then I cannot see it. Period. I can see the no's, I cannot see the yeses. Or vice versa. If you would just do is yes in the case of you only wanted them to see confidential recs, like if you had a confidential recruiter login group. All of this is dependent on login groups though. So you have to keep that in the back of your mind. This permission, search locks, security rules, which we'll get into in a minute, new iCIMS access controls, they're all dependent on the person being in a unique login group you can define permissions for. So I'm not watching the chat. Are there any questions?
So Amanda had a question. She said, what would we do to make that person's quick search a workflow search?
The simple setting in the background, you're going to have to call the help desk and tell them to have this act as a recruiting workflow search. I'm fairly certain it's not something that we have the ability to do as user admins.
And Kate mentioned she would love to do something like this for confidential recs and test recs, but so many of our reports are at the max filter limit already.
So that's where you rely on search locks in the background, because if it's search locked, you don't need to add it as a filter. It won't show up in their search. So in that case, if you're maxed out on filters in your searches, search locks don't have anything to do with the search itself. They're in the background on the user's login group profile. So the next piece, that's search locks are pretty much yes, no, on, off. There's not a whole lot else I can talk to as far as search locks are concerned. The next layer of configuration is going to be security rules. Now, security rules in this case are a very seldom used piece of iCIMS because they are limited to 5 per profile. So you have 5 in person, 5 in recruiting workflow, 5 in job, and so basically you get 5 potential security rules for each one of those different profiles. You can have different uses of each one of those 5 for every login group in your system. Don't do that. You can, but this is just because you can doesn't mean you should, because security rules are one of the hardest things to troubleshoot when there are problems with user access. So if you call the help desk and say, my users can't see 20 things, and you have all 5 security rules and each one of your security rules is configured differently for each login group, that is going to be a rabbit hole you'll chase your tail for months. So be judicious with security rules because they are they're very powerful. Let me just explain what a security rule is for those that have never used them. So security rules are applied at the profile and field level. Once again, they start with a report. Here is a report that I've configured for a security rule. All this is the job confidential rec is yes. And if I were going to apply this recruiting workflow search to a security rule, I would ask the help desk to apply it. You do not have, as admins, the ability to apply a security rule. Help desk needs to take that SR confidential report that I created and put it here. So and they won't do that in a test site, or I would configure the whole thing for you. But if I did have that, I would have SR confidential is here. And then per login group, I would apply the rule and then hide tabs or fields. And that is what a security rule does. And once again, you have 5 per profile. So a very common one that I see configured is IMHM. So you'll in a lot of newer provision sites, you'll see a security rule already applied called IMHM. And it basically means that the only way they can see any of these tabs is if they are the hiring manager in the standard hiring manager field on the requisition. That's a really common one that I recommend you look into if you want to get a little bit more granular on your permissions. But bottom line, a security rule is the next layer, and it will stop you. It can basically let you hide this offer details tab when the conditions that were in the report that I built are present. So that's the gotcha moment for everybody. So when the conditions in that SR confidential, where confidential equals yes, are present, then I have hidden this offer details tab. So they can see the candidate, they can see the profile, they can't see the offer details tab. That's the security rule that I most commonly build for this. The third layer that is a little less common, a little bit more powerful, and also a little bit trickier to use is new iCIMS access controls. So new iCIMS access controls, once again, also report-based. So you have 3 layers. I'm going to go back. And folks, keep me honest. Alex and Caitlin, if there's any questions, stop me. Because again, I'm not looking at the chat.
I got one. Yep. So
Okay.
Greg asked, so you can't test security rules in test environments?
You absolutely can. This is a partner config site. They won't give us that kind of thing in the partner config site. Like they won't let me build a bunch of different portals and that kind of stuff. I had to fight for an onboarding portal on this. It's just part of the partner agreement. But you having a test site, you can absolutely ask them in your test site, just screen test in your case, that you want to apply SR confidential and then go play around with it. Okay, so access controls, there's a couple of things you want to think about with access controls. Access controls are the only permissions configuration that allow dynamic filtering. So they're very powerful when you have your data table really robust. So if I have information on my person profile, so if Vivian Larson has cost center 1, 2, 3, 4, and the job has cost center 1, 2, 3, 4, and I want to create a rule where only show Vivian cost center jobs and person profiles and recruiting workflow profiles where person cost center is 1, 2, 3, 4. This gives me the ability to dynamically filter based off of something on my profile. So that is a really key thing to think about with new iCIMS access controls. Security rule or search blocks are 1-to-1, yes, no, on, off, no gray, binary. Security rules are based upon something that you can filter off of a report, and dynamic filtering is not available in security rules. New iCIMS access controls, dynamic filtering is possible. So where you would apply this in the case of a confidential requisition is if you are limiting and forcing folks to not have this toggle. That is a key crucial piece. If they can toggle, they can basically override these access controls. There is a report. So if I just go and look at the recruiting workflow version of this report, and just in this case, we'll do full access view. There's nothing configured in this particular site. If I would want to say where, in this instance, in our conversation today, confidential is not yes, in this case, and apply that to a login group. So my general hiring manager login group, my general recruiter login group, I'm going to build an access control where job confidential is not yes. And what this will do is when you configure this for that group, at the end of the user's search experience, if they're searching here, this is a crucial thing. Again, this doesn't honor access controls. Here, if this is the kind of search that they have access to, then it will basically show them you do not have access to this profile. It will give them, like, if I could type in the job number, I could type in the person's name. It will show like the card on the left with the person's name, but none of the data associated with that will show. So I'll do a deeper dive on access controls and configuring access controls in a later conversation. Been talking at you for about 20 minutes now, so I'm going to pause here. The one piece that I haven't covered, which I'm going to cover in a subsequent session, is confidential portals and confidential posting. So now that you've got this internal set of configuration where you've limited your users from seeing data they should not see, how do you get that job in the hands of the candidate, or the candidate is giving you their information in a way they don't see other jobs that they should not be looking at? And that is going to be a confidential portal. We'll dive into what a confidential portal configuration looks like in a subsequent session. So any questions from everybody in the group as to the simple steps, simple but complicated steps to do confidential portals? Daniela, you created it's a custom field. As far as where to hide it, Greg, you have raised your hand. Go ahead.
So I have a quick question. Have you ever used the confidential job portal? You can hide the offer tab. Have you had clients who've combined that with locking down the offer letter in the offer module? Like, are they handling that separate permissions, or are they finding some way to combine those?
So go back to the very beginning of the conversation where I said it is crucial that you have a unique login group.
Right.
So if you think about the offer management training we did a little while ago, where we were talking about permissions on individual letters, that's where you would apply that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
All right. Any other questions on confidential portals or confidential platform configurations?
I've got one. So if you're not required to post your requisition somewhere, is it necessary that you configure the portal side, or can you only keep it on the requisition side
You can keep it
without
on the
having to
requisition.
post it?
The portal is not a requirement, but the portal is a nice to have. So again, we'll deep dive into the portal piece of it in the next conversation, because that's a whole conversation in and of itself. But yeah, you don't have to have a portal, but it is recommended.
Thank you.
All right. So do we want to go to questions?
Any other questions on this subject? And if not, great. Thank you so much, Vivian. We will now go to our iCIMS space. One moment. All right, let's see what we have in here. Is Liam on the call? Liam, you had a couple of questions in here.
I did. I was hoping not to rapid fire them in, but it ended up happening. So and thank you to Cheryl for replying to it, but I'll kind of put it out there. So for the first one for start date field and time to start reporting, this kind of came up because we have a time to start field. We don't really use it on any standard reports for the TA teams. And some people started kind of grabbing it and using it, and they were getting negative numbers. And ultimately that turned out to be they were adding it to the wrong reports as an additional output field. So we've kind of since redirected them back, and we've created a standalone report for it. But we talked to our technical partner at iCIMS about it, because the standard start date field we use is person start date. And we were never told at the time we went live that there was a recruiting workflow start date field, which seems like it would be the better option. So part of the reason they were seeing some negatives, along with looking at candidates that hadn't been hired yet, is the fact that there's an old start date in there for internal candidates from when they were originally hired, which is older than their newest application date. So now we're kind of going through the process of discovery of exploring what it might look like to update our start date field to the recruiting workflow one versus the person one. So I was mostly curious if anyone had run into these types of issues before, and had been using the person start date field and kind of transitioned over to recruiting workflow start date field, or yeah, kind of general, just if people have run into this type of thing.
Do you use iCIMS onboarding?
We do.
So that person start date is crucial. It's what defines how your tasks are due.
Right. That was another thing our technical partner brought up, and he's taking a way to kind of come back to us to see if we can replace the recruiting workflow start date field into that instead of the person start date field, because he did call out it would mess with our due dates.
To my knowledge, it's hard coded.
Yeah, and I was kind of getting that vibe from it, but he's hopefully optimistic generally, so he's going to check for us anyway.
He might be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, things change, right? But I'm kind of thinking along the same lines as you. It's probably not. So that might end up being a roadblock for us. I mean, I think we have a roundabout way of circumventing the negative numbers. And it is more user error driven than anything else at this point. But yeah, I'm curious.
Do you have in your workflow statuses, do you have a status that you use to trigger onboarding and then a status that uses the hired auto launch action?
No, they're the same. So we have the onboarding wizard in with the hired auto launch action together as one status.
Do you send your internals to onboarding?
We do.
Okay, so that's unique. So do you have require auto launch checked on that status?
I believe so, but I can go double check.
And is the person start date field required on the profile for the logging group that is most frequently making the mistake?
Yes.
Okay. So the require auto launch, I would double check that one because that might force them to fill it out. It is part of the pop-up in the onboard workflow auto launch action. The person start date is where that is mapped to.
Right.
So if the require auto launch action is checked, they will not be able to close out and cancel and move forward without filling everything in.
Interesting. Yeah, no, we don't have that check. So you're saying that brings up another interesting point. So if auto launch required, they won't be able to close the window until they complete all the onboarding setup steps and everything like that too.
They won't move the person to the status until all the steps are finished.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. So
okay.
Yeah,
that's an unintended good takeaway from this.
Yeah. So my first recommendation to fix it moving forward is to require the auto launch action. Moving backwards, you could do a bulk edit and just cross-reference one to the other to fix some of your negatives. So essentially run a person report where person start date is blank, and then the recruiting workflow start date is run a recruiting workflow search where person start date is blank and the recruiting workflow start date is not blank, and just bulk edit to clean your system up to fix your data. That's usually when it's a reporting issue, start with fixing the data, because if the data is wrong, there's nothing you're going to do to fix the problem without fixing the data.
Sure. So the whole thing is the recruiting workflow start date we didn't even know existed until Wednesday. So it's currently a hidden field. So we have no data in for recruiting workflow start date. Now we also capture a proposed start date for the offer letter, but it only goes to the offer letter and we don't use it in any other kind of reporting. So the benefit of the recruiting workflow start date, if we were capturing that, would be to use it in like a time to start report. But I'm going to ask kind of a far-fetched question. Other than kind of manually going in and doing bulk updates to match data or something like that, would there be a way to capture? So like for the auto launch action for hired, we have person start date in there, which is what they fill out when they're completing that part of the workflow. Is there any way for it to duplicate that same value and match it to the recruiting workflow start date field so we're capturing both at the same time?
Via API, but not natively.
Okay.
So I have seen people build APIs where they've pulled the data out to a data warehouse and then written it back to other fields.
Yeah, that's we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
Why not just have iCIMS bulk update all of the start date on the recruiting workflow? So on the offer details tab for all your hires?
I think then my question is that for historical stuff, I think that works, but then how do we get it moving forward? And is it something that we have to keep bulk updating over time?
If
No,
you're
you
requiring
just
the
have the
auto-
recruiter update it.
Yeah, if you're requiring the auto launch action, now they can't skip it. So you're fixing it moving forward by requiring the auto launch action where they're forced to fill it in, and you're fixing their historical data. So your reporting is right.
Okay. All right. I will reach back out if I have more questions after we talk a little bit more about it. All
All right,
I'm up-
Liam,
I'm up
you actually
again.
had a second question too, if you want to
Yeah.
grab that one.
So this is about point in time reporting. So this kind of came up from the product pioneers session a month ago or so, where we were talking about dashboards and reporting. And a lot of people had mentioned that they would handle point in time report by doing scheduled reports and then kind of taking that stuff out of iCIMS. And I know it was for enhancement requests, it was something that people kept bringing up as iCIMS to kind of configure a way in the future for us to do this natively within iCIMS. But I was curious if what others have done, and if it's scheduled reports, what types of data people are exporting. I know Cheryl had kind of commented back in on the post too that you're now using a connector to kind of drop everything into a data lake, which we do have a Snowflake feed through a connector, but it's not technically ours. It belongs to a separate team within the company. So for kind of some of the higher level point in time reporting stuff, like how many recs were opened yesterday, or open at the end yesterday, or something to that effect. I'm just curious what other people have been doing to kind of handle that.
I think it really depends on what you're trying to achieve. So I think your question's a little broad, which is why you're getting silence.
Mm.
Let me give you an example. I just finished a project for a customer where they had a messy database with a bunch of the same piece of information was in a bunch of different fields. And they were having trouble getting this information on their users in a place where their users weren't asking for it in a way that they had to extract it into an exported report and then do all kinds of macros in Excel and VLOOKUPs and then send each one of them an individual email. This poor person was doing this for like 20 different business units. And so we first started with cleaning up their data. Move it, Vinny. We first started with cleaning up their data, and then we got that one data point in their system to the point where we were able to rely that it was accurate in every single instance. We created a new field, we bulk edited that new field, we made sure that piece of data was accurate for every single record in their system. And then from there, we built new dashboards off of it where it was, let's just call it cost center. It wasn't for that. Let's just say for cost center, because I used that example earlier. I was able to build them dashboards where it was open jobs by cost center, closed jobs by cost center, on hold by cost center, and so on. And then we were also in the process of doing a HRIS integration for them. So they were putting that cost center on their employee record. And now I can say on their profile where job profile matches employee profile cost center, show me the data. So essentially that real-time cost center using a profiling field, which I've got a course up on now. You want to quick go look at that if you're unfamiliar with them. I can say, show Vivian Larson's jobs by cost center and show Vivian all jobs in her cost center approved within this month, this year, this week, however I would want to slice it. Does that answer your question?
I think it gives me a starting point, and I appreciate that. I will go watch what you have out there, and may just come to office hours with you if I have follow-up questions.
Great. Thank you so much for the questions. All right, Kathy.
Hello. Okay, so we just implemented interview scheduler and we're just going through the configurations, and I'm at the point of the notification templates. And I was told that we can, customize like specific to, I think like one of the main points is we want to make something customizable to bring in, like if we're for those on-site interviews, bring in like instructions on how to enter the building, parking details, and anything else that they might want to include for our specific on-site locations. And trying to set that up, I'm kind of having a hard time to how to create those type of custom notification templates. I don't want to override any of the default templates that are in the system, and that's why I put that screenshot to kind of show. This, I think, the second screenshot, I think it was showing pretty much what the templates look like. Like the last template, I put notification settings, and I just don't know really how to add. It's not like the email library, in the system where you can click an existing template and do like a override or like a save as to kind of create a new template. Here, it's a different setting. And so I'm just trying to wrap my head around how can I create a custom notification, like, for example, interview confirmed notification. Well, I like the default one, but what if I want to create another interview confirmed, maybe specific to on-site, where I can then add those instructions to that one, but I don't want to overwrite the default. I hope that makes sense. I'm just trying to figure out how to customize it without removing any of the default templates that are in the system. Because I think iCIMS, I want to say iCIMS told me I can go to the default and I can save it there, and it's only going to save to the new notification one that I created. It will not override the default template. I think they said that, but I'm just scared to try that, or I just wanted to see what anybody else, how you guys are doing it, if that makes sense. And this is just to the notification templates, not the actual interview invite template.
And I want to confirm you're using the latest version of interview scheduling. Is that correct?
Yes.
So with the most recent fall release, you have the new notification customization sets, if you will, or notification sets that will allow you to create sets based upon the job type. If I can steal your screen share for just a moment, I can kind of give you a preview of what that looks like.
Yeah, right
That
ahead.
would be great.
Rob, what you're referencing though is tied to like the job category, right?
Correct. That is correct.
So is it driven by the job category? Does it have to be a job category?
It is, yes. So in that aspect, your job category here kind of drives the set that you can do here. But again, if you have jobs that you do on site only that you want to customize, so like accounting or what have you, you could kind of create a in-person set, and then essentially go through all of the options here to customize your notifications to the candidate, to the interviewers, and customize everything from the emails to text as well.
Do you have to go through every single one, or only whatever you need from there?
It's only what you need for this particular job set. So if you mentioned the defaults, right? So you've got the default options here. You
Yeah.
can see what your default options are, but you can create sets outside of that with the new sets.
Okay. So if I just want like something for just like our corporate office, and they want to do on-site interviews, and it could be for engineering, marketing, corporate, it could be for anything. It won't work unless I select a job category.
That's correct.
Interesting.
So it may require you to go back and rethink the way your categories are set currently.
Yeah.
And this is, again, going to allow you more flexibility and capabilities on top of that to go back and redefine how you do your notifications.
Okay.
Rob, can you go back in there? So when you're creating your template for, let's say, on-site, right? You got your phone screens, your teams, you got all your business. When you're creating that template, if you can go back to the template.
For the initial setup, yeah.
No, cancel that and go over to the left to templates.
So this is just the type, yeah.
Yeah, create a new template.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you scroll down, see it has the notification set. So if you've got on-site, support center, or corporate, scroll up a little bit, and that you can save this so that, you know,
Yes.
accounting. So this is do it. I would save it as a template for on-site interviews and have my notification set that said, okay, HR, IT, you know, whatever. And then when I use that template, it's going to pull that notification set. So I think you only have to do 1 and 1 to get all your corporate positions. And then when you send the proper interview template, it's going to do the right notification too.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, and you could see that it used the shortening that I gave it here versus the actual job function.
Mm-hmm.
So I would
Kathy,
recommend
I think
definitely testing that.
your instance, you were trying to do it like by location, right?
Yeah.
Because you have multiple locations.
Mhm.
Yeah. Just I was trying to do it by location, just, you know, really
So it
just
sounds like she would have to create like by location job categories,
So like
right?
the corporate office, right? Yeah.
So if you have a support center in California, one in Arizona, and one in Texas, then you're going to have 3 interview templates, right? On-site, interview, corporate, and then you'll have each of those notifications. I haven't seen those notification sets. That's pretty slick.
That's brand new, so.
That interview tool is fantastic. It's so easy to use. That just adds another layer of awesome on it.
Yeah, and you said it was in the fall release?
Yes, it was just released in the fall release.
Okay. I'll have to go back and look at that and see. So I'm assuming that information is listed there as well, so I can read it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the release notes and everything. So that is really brand new, hot into the release.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Rob.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Before we go to Jessica's question, I want to run a quick poll. We're doing some infrastructure stuff with SAI, and we're thinking about bringing the meeting into the Circle platform itself. One thing that we would lose, however, is the ability to do breakouts. And I've gotten some mixed feedback on the value of the breakouts. So I'd like to poll and just take the temperature a little bit, because a lot of people drop. They don't necessarily want to do it. But if we were to lose the ability to do breakouts as part of this event, how much or how would you feel about that? Okay, 50% responding. And give it 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Great. That is unambiguous. Appreciate it. Jessica, you had a question. Let me share the screen here.
Yes, thank you. This
Yes.
is actually also about interview scheduling. And I sort of touched on this before. So we were looking at interview scheduling. Unfortunately, our IT department declined the approval to integrate Microsoft Office for that calendar visibility. And so now we're in the process of evaluating whether or not we can still make it work, because there were a lot of benefits that we wanted to capture, and it would be something that is not any additional expense, right? Because it's already available to us in the platform. But there's a couple of issues that I'm running into, and I was curious if anybody else is using interview scheduling without the calendar integration and has found some workarounds for these issues. From my understanding, I know that what we can do is we can manually set calendar availability for hiring managers, right? And we can use it that way when we're sending invites out for candidates to self-schedule. The problem is that that's not a practical approach for recruiters with phone screens, because they're not going to re-update their calendar availability every time before they send out a self-scheduling invite. Currently, we're using Microsoft Bookings, which is free and meets our organization's requirements regarding the ability for like viewing access to calendars and whatnot. So if we were to try to continue to use Bookings to send out and then somehow still schedule the invites through interview management, that is just pretty clunky, because we can't turn off the notification. Like, we would want the candidates, I'm pretty sure, to accept the invites if they're sent through interview scheduling, I'm guessing, so that we can go ahead and track that they're there. And if they need to reschedule or cancel, we would want them to do that through interview scheduling. But they would get like a bookings, we can adjust bookings so that it's not a calendar invite, so that they aren't getting two calendar invites, one from iCIMS interview scheduling and one from bookings, but they still get a confirmation, and you don't have the ability to customize what that confirmation says in bookings to say something like, hey, if you need to cancel or reschedule, do it through iCIMS, which even if we could, that's just not a great user experience. It's pretty clunky. So that's sort of the first piece is, how are your recruiters handling self-scheduling without the calendar integration? Or are they just not sending their phone screens through interview management? All right, and if there are no responses for that, I did have another question some people might be able to clear up for me.
Well, let's hold on. Let's just give it a little bit of space here. Does anybody have thoughts on that?
Does Bookings have a static link?
Yeah. Sorry, can you clarify what you mean by that?
Like a standard link for your recruiters. Like, is it a static link that's the same URL every single time that somebody uses Bookings?
Yes, so in Bookings, you can have different services. And so for me, I would have like candidate phone screen, 30 minutes. And it is the same link every time, and it's connected to my, real-time calendar availability.
Okay, so the reason I asked that question is my past organization a long time ago used Calendly, and every recruiter had their own Calendly link, and they had a free account basically back then. And what we did was we created a field on the employee profile, so that way that recruiter's link could be URL linked directly in that field. And then we reprogrammed that to email templates, and then associated that email template to a status for an event notification. So anytime like a recruiter reviewed candidates, and say you go through, you start your day, you're reviewing all your candidates, you get rid of the ones that don't qualify or what have you, and then you have your remaining candidates that are qualified. They would bulk grab all of those candidates and advance them to this status that would send out the event notification to allow the candidate to schedule on their calendar. Now, again, that's not going into iCIMS necessarily as far as the scheduled date, but it allows you to have self-scheduling essentially.
So that's not the issue, because right now we already have all of the links in email templates that are tied to the request phone screen or send phone screen invite status. So we're already accomplishing that. Like, we're already doing it through iCIMS. It's already in the email templates. My problem is if we want to leverage interview scheduling, because Booking doesn't have a lot of stuff that interview scheduling has. It doesn't have the text confirmations unless you pay more money for a certain subscription. It's not as easy to reschedule. Like, if you reschedule, you you also can't set limitations like you can in interview scheduling for how quickly somebody can book out. So like we get a lot of candidates who don't respond, and 2 months later they go back and access the same email and put time on the recruiter's calendars, and they're like, hey, this job closed 2 months ago. Nice try.
Right.
So we want to utilize interview scheduling. It's just without the calendar integration, it's difficult particularly for phone screens. It's not ideal for hiring managers, but we can make it work. But just not realistic for recruiters at all.
Okay. I don't have another idea there on that aspect then.
Okay, no,
Barbie.
thank you. I bet you will for my second question with this. So from what I read on a previous post in the community, if you don't have the calendar integration set up, then you can't choose video and link to a different like video scheduler platform. Does anyone know if that's true? Because we use Cisco WebEx for all of our candidate video interview scheduling. And so I want to be able to say, hey, this is a video interview, but then put the meeting link, in there, and it's external. I heard that that's not possible if you don't have the calendar integration on. So I'm curious, is that true? Is anybody else doing that? Because we don't want to cause confusion candidates by, not labeling it as a video interview.
This is Cheryl. I recall hearing that same thing, and I remember looking at like just testing it real quick. And at the time, when it first got released, it did not work. Like there was no way to do a video interview with a link and everything like that. I don't know if they've updated, but I thought I read something saying that they were going to update it or fix it or something. I don't remember though.
Same. Anybody else would have a platform that wasn't connected with iCIMS yet, and maybe has tried that.
Any takers? So Paul, you said, I've implemented the same thing for clients in the past. For Microsoft bookings, you have to use Power Automate to build out your automations. Okay. Paul,
Yeah,
anything
so
else you
that's
want to
kinda
add to that?
No, that's just kind of like the Microsoft suite. Power Automate is what helps you connect all their apps together to build out like automations and stuff like that. So maybe some of the things could be possible in Microsoft bookings. You would have to just play around with Power Automate to see if you could design those automations in there.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Paul. We do use Power Automate for quite a few things within org, but I hadn't thought about it for these other things. And I'm not sure if they would, I'm not sure if that would be possible, but that's something to look into as far as not allowing them to, like putting an end date time for the invitation. And same with like, we really wanted it to be reportable and trackable in iCIMS so that when you're in a requisition and you're looking at a candidate and you see they're scheduled for an interview, we can see what day, what time, we can report on all of it. We really like the convenience of interview scheduling with rescheduling and canceling and the text messages that can go to the hiring managers as well as the candidates.
No, absolutely. I totally get it.
Any other thoughts on that subject? All right, Jessica, thank you so much for the great questions. Anybody else have a question today? We've got 5 minutes, and then we'll wrap up.
This is Michelle. I have a question just along the same lines of the new interview scheduling module. I'm wondering if anyone knows if they're going to allow us to schedule conference rooms at some point, because it's hard for us to move forward to schedule on-site interviews if I can't schedule rooms.
Angela's not here, is she?
Sorry, go ahead.
I said Angela's not here, is she? She and I talked about this a lot. Nope. I know there's a post in SAI about this where several workarounds were offered up.
Yeah, and we use workarounds. It'd be nice to be able to, like in the old in the legacy interview module, be able just to schedule a room and have it tied to our conference rooms. Didn't know if there was any future updates that it might be scheduled for.
Caitlin, what would I search for here?
Conference.
That's so interesting that that functionality would be removed because
No.
I used the legacy version at my at Quick Check and yeah, we
Maybe
had no
room.
issues with like scheduling conference rooms.
It's great if you're using the legacy because it allows you, our conference rooms are tied. All you have to do is use the drop down, pick your room, and it sends it to everyone. And so in order for us to move to the new module, it's workarounds, and it just seems silly that we have to do that.
Okay, I found it. So this was addressed on our July 25th call, conference room scheduling. So you can find that in the platform, and there's a timestamp for it too, so you can jump right there.
Yep. But again, that was before the new module came out. I just didn't know if maybe next we're using those workarounds. I mean, that's not the case. I'm just trying to see, is it on iCIMS radar at all to be able to get that done? The other thing we have problems with too, we pay for the Microsoft Teams module, yet all of our conference rooms use Microsoft Teams rally bars. And when we schedule video interviews through Microsoft Teams, you go into the conference room and it'll schedule the interview, but it won't give you the join button. So in order to actually have a video conference in that room, you have to go in now and identify the meeting ID and password and manually log in. My IT department stumped on how to get that to work. And iCIMS hasn't had any good solutions. I didn't know if anyone else was running into that as well.
Are you using Teams?
Yes.
Okay. I may reach out to you. I want to confirm because I'm pretty sure like when we schedule our conference rooms, it invites our like the Teams conference room itself also. So it books a conference room and schedules it and everything so they can use it. Let me get back to you just to confirm how it works.
It's just hard, with that not working, now the managers have to remember to bring in with them their ID and password, and it should just work. I mean, it's all the same platform, but yeah, that'd be great if you had a solution for that.
Are you using both legacy and the new interview scheduling tool, or you're just using the new tool?
So for recruiters doing their pre-screens, we are using the new scheduling module. Works great. When we're scheduling hiring managers, and it has to be on site in a room, we're using the old interview module. So we're using both. We would like to get away from that, but we've got to get some of these hurdles before we can do that.
All right. Well, thank you so much for the question. If you'd like to stick around and share something that you learned or what we learned video, we'd welcome you to join us. If not, have a restful and restorative weekend. Thank you, everybody. Talk to you soon.